After divorcing my cruel husband, I opened a small bakery on the outskirts of town. One night, during a violent storm and massive flooding, a man arrived carrying his elderly mother. I let them take shelter and rest in my shop until morning. 2 months later, a black luxury car stopped in front of my bakery. I was stunned when I saw the same man and his mother step out, accompanied by 2 bodyguards. What they said that day changed my life forever. But before the story begins, please write in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe so the Midnight Stories channel can continue to grow and bring you even more captivating stories. Claire stood in the middle of her warm, modest kitchen, staring blankly at the fogged-up window. The scent of cinnamon and brown sugar baking in the oven filled the air, creating a sharp contrast with the cold emptiness still wrapped around her heart. It was only 3 a.m., but sleep had become a luxury Claire could no longer afford since leaving the grand house that had been her prison for 5 long years. She wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand and returned to kneading the dough. Her movements were steady and forceful, as if channeling all her anger and unspoken disappointment into the flour beneath her palms. This was her new routine, a healing ritual on the quiet edge of town, far from the glittering chaos of her former life as the wife of a wealthy businessman named Aaron. Divorce had not been an easy decision for a woman like Claire. She still vividly remembered Aaron's mocking gaze when she handed him the divorce papers. He laughed loudly, his voice echoing through their vast, cold living room. Aaron said she wouldn't survive a single week in the real world without his money and privileges. He called her a foolish woman who didn't know her place, abandoning luxury over something meaningless as dignity. But Claire's resolve was firm. She'd rather live poor and work herself to the bone than endure daily insults about her worthlessness, or stumble upon proof of Aaron's affairs with a woman named Tessa, evidence he deliberately left behind in his suit pockets or car. Claire left with nothing but the clothes on her back, a few spare outfits, and an old, worn recipe book left to her by her late mother. With the small amount of personal savings she had secretly set aside over the years, Claire rented an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. It stood at a rarely traveled intersection, surrounded by tall trees and modest homes. The place was in terrible condition. The roof leaked, the paint peeled off the walls, dust blanketed the floor. But Claire saw potential. For an entire month, she worked day and night cleaning the place by herself. She painted the walls white, fixed broken hinges, and arranged secondhand wooden tables bought from a flea market. She named the bakery Sweet Lantern, a symbol of her quiet hope that this place could become a light in the darkness of her life. Every morning, Claire awoke before dawn. She prayed, asked for strength, then lit her old oven. She baked pull-apart bread, classic donuts, and simple sponge cakes. No imported ingredients, no fancy equipment. Everything was made by hand, with heart and with prayer. At first, only a few curious neighbors stopped by, but slowly the aroma of fresh bread began to draw people in. They loved the warmth and authenticity of Claire's baking, so different from mass-produced pastries. Her gentle smile beneath her simple shawl became another reason customers kept returning. Yet, even as she found her rhythm, Aaron's shadow never fully disappeared. Aaron was a man with a towering ego. Being divorced by a woman he had always considered weak humiliated him deeply. The threats began with text messages sent to Claire's old phone, full of intimidation. Aaron swore he would make her suffer, claiming he could block every job opportunity she tried to get. Claire changed her number, blocked every connection to her past, but the fear lingered. Every time a black car drove slowly past her bakery, her heart raced. One evening, as she was closing the shop, Claire found a brown envelope slipped beneath the rolling door. Inside were photographs. Photos of her sweeping the front yard, photos of her buying flour at the market, even photos of her sitting alone behind the counter. On the back of one photo, written in red ink, was a chilling message. "You can't run. I'm watching you." Claire collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. She wasn't alone. She'd never been. Panicking, she searched the bakery. Under the counter, her fingers touched something small and hard, a tiny black listening device. Her blood ran cold. She ripped it out and crushed it under her heel, tears streaming, not from sadness, but rage. That night, Claire didn't sleep. She sat on the floor upstairs, clutching a wooden rosary left by her father, the only thing she owned besides the recipe book. She considered running again, but she knew Aaron would never stop. So she chose to stay. She prayed deeply, placing her fate in God's hands, the only protector who would never abandon her. The next day, Claire opened Sweet Lantern as usual, but more alert than ever. Days passed in constant tension. Then came the storm. The sky turned dark gray, wind howled violently, customers rushed home early, rain poured down with thunder shaking the windows. Within minutes, the street outside turned into a river. The power went out. Claire lit candles and prepared to retreat upstairs when she noticed movement outside. A man struggling through the flood, carrying someone on his back. Without hesitation, she opened the door. The man's name was Daniel. The woman he carried was his elderly mother. Claire helped them inside, dried them, wrapped the mother in blankets, and fed them hot ginger tea and soup. Daniel was quiet, reserved, but dignified. Claire noticed a small geometric tattoo on his wrist, a circle crossed by 3 lines. The symbol felt strangely familiar. They spent the night trapped together as the storm raged. Daniel never left his mother's side, holding her hand the entire time. Watching him, Claire felt something stir inside her, a reminder that kindness still existed in the world. And as Daniel's mother slowly opened her eyes, calm returning to her face, Claire had no idea that this night, born of fear, storms, and compassion, was the beginning of a miracle that would change her life forever. Daniel leaned closer to his mother, whispering soothing words into her ear. Slowly, the elderly woman turned her gaze toward Claire. Her eyes were calm and deep, as if they could see straight into Claire's soul. She offered a faint smile and lifted her hand, motioning for Claire to come closer. Claire rose from her chair and crouched beside the long bench. The old woman reached for Claire's hand, holding it firmly with fingers that were still cold, yet surprisingly gentle. She didn't speak much. She simply stared at Claire's face with quiet intensity. Then her eyes fell on the wooden prayer beads looped around Claire's wrist, the old beads Claire carried everywhere. The old woman's eyes widened slightly, as if she recognized them. She brushed the wooden beads with her thumb, then looked back at Claire with a gaze full of meaning and restrained emotion. Her lips moved slowly, uttering a beautiful prayer meant only for Claire. Warmth spread through Claire's chest. She didn't understand why, but she felt a strange spiritual bond with this elderly woman, as if their meeting that night was not coincidence, but part of a greater destiny just beginning to unfold. Outside, lightning struck violently, illuminating the 3 of them for a split second, marking the beginning of a story that would change everything. Time seemed to slow inside Sweet Lantern that night. Outside, the storm still raged with relentless fury, creating a terrifying yet hypnotic symphony. Wind slammed against the old wooden walls like a long, anguished wail, punctuated by thunder that shook the floor beneath them. Yet inside the dimly lit room, illuminated only by flickering candles, there was a strange sense of warmth. Claire sat on a small wooden chair near the cashier counter, keeping a respectful distance while remaining alert. Her eyes occasionally fluttered shut as exhaustion crept in, but she forced herself to stay awake. She felt responsible for the safety of the two lives sheltering under her roof. Daniel remained seated beside his mother like a silent guardian statue. Though his body appeared relaxed, his eyes constantly scanned the room, ensuring no danger lurked in the shadows. From time to time, he adjusted the blanket or gently touched his mother's forehead, checking her temperature. Claire watched quietly. During her years with Aaron, she had never witnessed such genuine care. Aaron had always been consumed by himself, treating parents as burdens or social accessories. Seeing Daniel's protectiveness made Claire's chest ache, reminding her of her late father and how deeply she missed having a protector in her life. The silence finally broke when Daniel turned toward her. His voice was low and heavy, nearly drowned by the rain, but clear to Claire's ears. He asked how long she had been living alone in such a remote place. It was a simple question, yet his tone carried deeper curiosity. Claire hesitated, then answered honestly but briefly. She said she had only been there a few months, starting a new life. She didn't mention the divorce, Aaron, or her escape, only that she wanted independence through baking, using her late mother's recipes. Daniel nodded slowly. His gaze was not judgmental. If anything, it suggested understanding, as if he sensed the deep wounds hidden behind her polite smile. Then he stood and walked around the small shop, examining the old black and white photographs on the walls, images of the town in earlier days, traditional markets long gone. He stopped in front of a glass cabinet filled with neatly packaged cookies in elegant jars. He commented that the place had a soul, unlike the cold, rigid modern shops in the city center. The compliment made her cheeks warm. Aaron had always mocked her business, calling it shabby and embarrassing. Hearing appreciation from a stranger made her feel human again, like someone whose work mattered. Daniel asked about her pastries, which one did she love making most. Their conversation flowed gently about yeast, flour, and the patience required to bake bread. Far removed from business or politics, yet incredibly calming amid the storm. Later that night, Daniel's mother woke again, this time in much better condition. Her face was no longer pale and her breathing steady. With Daniel and Claire's help, she sat up, leaning against the wall. She scanned the room with sharp eyes, as if sorting through her memories. When Claire brought her a glass of warm water, the woman smiled, an elegant, dignified smile that suggested she was no ordinary village elder. She thanked Claire using refined, structured language, the kind once spoken by nobility or the highly educated. In a hearse but clear voice, she began to speak. She said the bakery's aroma reminded her of her youth, of a place where she once spent time with dear friends before the world grew harsh. She spoke of loss, of survival after loved ones disappeared one by one. Claire listened intently, feeling each word resonate with her own life. Without realizing it, she sat on the floor near the woman's feet, listening like a child being told a bedtime story. A deep emotional connection formed quickly, as if their souls recognized each other's suffering and resilience. Suddenly, the woman took Claire's hand and turned her palm upward, tracing the lines with her wrinkled finger. She murmured that Claire's palm belonged to a warrior, someone destined to hold something great in the future. Claire smiled bitterly, thinking the prophecy impossible given her current struggles with debt and threats from her ex-husband. but the woman looked into her eyes with absolute seriousness. She said the storm outside was God's way of clearing the path, and that the guests who came that night were no coincidence. Then she whispered a name. Claire's grandfather's name. Claire froze. How could this stranger know that? Before she could ask, the woman closed her eyes again, exhausted, leaving a heavy mystery hanging in the air. Daniel noticed Claire's confusion and gently gestured for her not to dwell on it. He said his mother often spoke of the past due to her age, but Claire caught something unusual in Daniel's eyes when his mother spoke that name, a flicker of recognition, as if he knew exactly what she meant and chose silence. Near dawn, the rain softened into a light drizzle. Claire, who had dozed lightly, woke to the distant sound of the morning call to prayer. Daniel was already awake, stretching near the door, looking refreshed despite barely sleeping. He greeted Claire softly. The warmth in his voice made her heart stir. Claire performed her morning prayers, lingering longer than usual. She prayed that this encounter would bring goodness and for strength to face the challenges Aaron would surely bring. When she returned, Daniel's mother called her over quietly while Daniel stepped outside to check the floodwaters. Holding Claire's shoulders firmly, the woman leaned in and whispered words that would echo in Claire's mind forever. She told her not to fear the shadows of the past because a great light was coming to find her. She urged Claire to protect this bakery with her life, for within it lay the key to all the answers behind her family's suffering. The whisper sounded like a final testament. Claire's skin prickled. When Daniel returned, the woman released her and smiled normally, as if nothing had happened. Morning light filtered through the vents, illuminating the damp floor. Outside, the flood had receded, leaving mud and broken branches behind. Claire opened the bakery doors wide, letting fresh air replace the damp scent. Daniel stood on the porch, looking down the road. His phone, which was dead the night before, was now on. He typed a short message and slipped it into his pocket. It was time to part. Daniel thanked Claire sincerely, saying it was rare in such a transactional world to find someone who would open their door to strangers in a storm without expecting anything in return. Then he pulled out a small, gleaming object, a silver coin, ancient and intricately engraved. He placed it in Claire's palm and closed her fingers around it. "This isn't payment," he said. "It's a sign of friendship and a promise that we'll meet again." Claire tried to refuse, but Daniel insisted, saying one day she would understand its value. He also handed her a sealed white envelope, telling her to open it only if she was truly desperate, with no way out. Before she could ask more, a simple black sedan stopped outside. Daniel helped his mother inside, gave Claire one last respectful nod, and the car drove away. After they left, the bakery felt strangely empty, but Claire had no time to dwell. She cleaned up and began baking. Her energy felt renewed. By 9 a.m., something unusual happened. Customers arrived in waves, well-dressed office workers, elegant women, buying everything. Within 3 hours, her display was nearly empty. Cash filled the register. Claire's answer only fueled Aaron's rage. He stepped forward as if he were about to strike her, causing several female customers to gasp and scream in shock. Aaron stopped himself at the last second when he noticed people pulling out their phones, recording everything. He snorted angrily and spat on the shop floor Claire had just cleaned. Pointing his finger inches from her face, he delivered a final threat. Claire would regret ever defying him. Starting tomorrow, her life would become a living hell. After venting his anger, Aaron turned away, kicking a plastic chair on the porch so hard it flew across the pavement. His red car sped off, leaving behind choking exhaust fumes. Claire stood frozen in the center of her shop, now eerily silent. Customers stared at her with pity. She forced a smile and apologized for the disturbance, but deep down, she knew the real war had just begun. Her fingers slipped into the pocket of her apron, touching the silver coin Daniel had given her. The cold metal strangely radiated warmth, calming her trembling heart. Claire realized she would need a miracle far greater than a thriving bakery to survive Aaron's grip. Aaron's threat was far from empty. A week after the incident, Claire began to feel the real attack, one that targeted not her building, but something far more fragile: trust. That morning felt different. As Claire opened Sweet Lantern, neighbors who once greeted her warmly now turned away or whispered while casting suspicious glances at her shop. She tried to smile and say hello, but received only stiff nods or complete silence. Confusion gnawed at her heart. The answer came when a loyal customer, a young mother who often bought bread for her child, approached hesitantly. She didn't enter the shop. Instead, she stood at the doorway and showed Claire her phone. A viral post in the local community group accused Sweet Lantern of using expired ingredients scavenged from factory waste. Worse, there were fabricated photos showing rats in a kitchen claimed to be Claire's. Claire covered her mouth in shock. She knew her kitchen was spotless. Those photos were lies. She tried to explain, but doubt had already rooted root in the woman's eyes. Apologizing softly, the customer left without buying anything. Claire retreated inside, devastated. She knew exactly who was behind this: Aaron and Tina. They were strangling her livelihood through deceit. She sat at the cashier's desk, staring at freshly baked bread. The comforting aroma now felt tragic in an empty shop. All day, Sweet Lantern was silent like a graveyard. She whispered prayers, clinging to faith to keep her mind from collapsing. But the terror escalated. That afternoon, a government vehicle stopped outside the shop. 2 men in official uniforms claiming to be from the health department entered without permission. When Claire asked for their warrant, one of them snapped at her. They ransacked the kitchen, knocking over containers, acting as if they were hunting for criminal evidence. Claire stood helpless in the corner, tears streaming as her workplace was violated. After 10 minutes of chaos, one officer slapped a large red sticker on the shop's front window: "Under investigation, suspected hygiene violations." They handed her a warning notice, ordering Sweet Lantern closed until further inspection, or her license would be revoked permanently. As they left, Claire saw Aaron's car creeping by across the street. The window lowered slightly, revealing Tina's smug smile. Confirmation burned into Claire's chest. This was all planned. That evening, Claire closed the shop early. Exhausted beyond measure, she went upstairs to her modest room. Not physically tired, but emotionally shattered. Why did evil always win? Why was honesty and hard work so easily destroyed? She sat at the edge of her bed, clutching her late father's wooden prayer beads, sobbing uncontrollably. Then her eyes fell on a drawer beside the bed. Inside lay a white envelope Daniel had given her, telling her to open it only if she had no other way out. With shaking hands, Claire tore it open. Inside was a black business card with gold lettering, no company name, no address, just one name: Basker, and a phone number. On the back, Daniel's handwriting read, "Call him, he knows what to do." Claire hesitated until she remembered Tina's smile and the red sticker. She dialed. After 3 rings, a calm, deep voice answered. "Good afternoon, Miss Claire. We've been expecting your call." Her breath caught. How did he know her name? After she explained everything, Baska replied firmly, "You don't need to worry anymore. From this moment on, your problem is ours. Ignore the sticker. Open your shop tomorrow as usual. We'll handle the rest quietly." The confidence in his voice lifted a weight from her soul. 2 months later, the red sticker vanished the next day. The same officers returned, pale and apologetic. The online slander disappeared, fake accounts deleted, verified reviews praising Sweet Lantern flooded in. The shop became busier than ever. But Aaron wasn't done. His final card, forced eviction. That morning, Aaron arrived with lawyers, Tina, and 10 bulky thugs blocking the entrance. He announced through a megaphone that the land was his. Claire stood calmly on the porch, wearing a dark blue dress and a matching shawl. No fear, only quiet strength. As a thug reached for her, the low, powerful hum of engines filled the street. 3 black armored sedans arrived in perfect formation. Men in black suits formed a silent barricade. Then the central door opened. Daniel stepped out. No longer the man from the storm, but a titan of industry. He helped an elegant old woman out, their presence commanding absolute respect. Daniel ignored Aaron entirely. He bowed slightly to Claire. His mother embraced her warmly. "Sorry we're late, dear." Then Daniel turned slowly to Aaron. "Who gave you permission to cause trouble on my family's property?" Aaron couldn't speak. For the first time in her life, Claire felt truly safe. He stared at Daniel with widened eyes, as if unable to believe what he was seeing. Aaron had never known Daniel as a friend, only as a towering figure in the business world, a man whose name was spoken with both reverence and fear among executives. Daniel was the leader of the Wirawan Group, a massive conglomerate controlling vital sectors across the country, from real estate and logistics to banking and finance. For Aaron, who owned nothing more than a mid-level company surviving on small government contracts, standing against Daniel was like an ant daring to challenge an elephant. Whatever courage he had evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold fear creeping down his spine. Daniel continued to look at Aaron with calm yet lethal eyes. He didn't need to raise his voice or resort to physical force. His presence alone was enough to make Aaron's hired thugs slowly step back, dropping the wooden sticks and iron bars they carried, afraid to make any move that might be perceived as a threat by Daniel's fully alert security team. He then stepped forward, leaning in slightly, and spoke in a low voice meant only for those nearby. "Are you absolutely certain," he asked politely yet firmly, "that you have any legal right to this land?" The question was simple, but to Aaron it sounded like a judge's final verdict. Aaron tried to answer, but his voice caught in his throat. He could only swallow hard as cold sweat soaked the collar of his expensive shirt. Without waiting for a reply, Daniel gestured to one of his personal assistants standing near the car. The man immediately stepped forward, carrying a sleek black leather folder that looked unmistakably exclusive. Daniel took it and politely invited Claire and his mother to step inside the shop so the discussion could proceed with dignity. With an unavoidable hand gesture, he also summoned Aaron and Tina. With trembling legs, Aaron was forced to walk into the small bakery he had moments ago intended to destroy. Tina followed behind him, her head lowered. Even her heavy makeup couldn't hide the sheer terror etched on her face. Curious neighbors crowded outside the windows, eager to witness the drama unfolding inside the humble cake shop. Inside, Claire sat beside Daniel's mother, whose hand never let go of Claire's, offering quiet strength and reassurance. Daniel stood at the cashier counter, placing the black leather folder in front of everyone. He opened it slowly, revealing old documents, yellowed with age yet immaculately preserved. At the very top was a golden national emblem and an official government seal. Daniel began to explain in a clear, authoritative voice. The land on which Sweet Lantern stood was not disputed property as Aaron had claimed. It was legally registered productive endowment land, documented 30 years earlier by its original owner, a visionary philanthropist. And the name listed on the certificate was unmistakable: Claire's biological father. Claire gasped as she stared at her father's name. Tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. All her life she had believed her father was merely a failed trader who died leaving behind debt and hardship. She never imagined he had prepared this place long before she was even born. Daniel continued. He explained that their families had shared a deep bond in the past. Daniel's grandfather owed his life to Claire's father during a riot decades ago. In gratitude, Claire's father made one request. If anything ever happened to him, the Wirawan family was to safeguard these hidden assets and return them to his daughter, only after she had proven her independence and resilience. Hearing this, Aaron felt his world collapse. For years, he had forged land documents by bribing low-level officials, assuming Claire was an orphaned woman with no connections. He never imagined that behind her stood a giant wall named the Wirawan Group. Daniel looked at Aaron with open disdain and pulled out another document, this one modern, a forensic audit report. Daniel revealed that over the past 2 months, his investigative team had conducted a financial audit of Aaron's company. The results were damning: embezzlement of investors' funds, falsified tax invoices, and money laundering through fake employee accounts. "You are not a successful businessman, Aaron," Daniel said coldly. "You are a fraud, building a castle of sand on top of mud." Aaron tried to deny it, shouting that everything was fabricated, but Daniel wasn't finished. He placed a tablet on the counter. On the screen played CCTV footage from a private cafe. The video clearly showed Aaron and Tina laughing as they planned to forge Claire's signature and seize the remaining assets of her late mother. Their voices were crystal clear, proud, shameless. Seeing herself on the screen, Tina collapsed, sobbing hysterically. She begged for forgiveness, claiming she was only following Aaron's orders. Her betrayal pushed Aaron further into despair. Claire looked at her former husband with mixed emotions. There was no hatred, only pity. Pity for a man whose greed had turned him into something pathetic. Daniel's mother finally spoke, her voice gentle yet firm. "True wealth," she said, "is not measured by how much money you accumulate, but by how much honor you preserve. You discarded a diamond like Claire for worthless gravel. Now you must pay the price for your blindness." Daniel snapped the folder shut. He informed Aaron that officers from the Economic Crimes Unit were already waiting outside. The documents on the table were more than enough to send him to prison for years. Aaron collapsed into a chair, his body limp. He looked at Claire, desperation in his eyes. "Claire, please," he croaked. "We once loved each other." Claire shook her head calmly. "That love died by your own hands," she replied. "I forgive you as a fellow human being, but justice must still take its course." Moments later, 2 uniformed police officers entered, handcuffed Aaron and Tina, and led them away amid the jeers of onlookers. Aftermath. After the arrest, Sweet Lantern slowly returned to silence. The neighbors dispersed, still buzzing with disbelief. Inside, only Claire, Daniel, and his mother remained. Later, Daniel revealed one final truth. The shop was once a secret laboratory belonging to Claire's father, a brilliant food scientist who had developed revolutionary natural preservative formulas worth billions of dollars if patented. To prevent misuse by corrupt corporations, he hid everything here. The silver coin Daniel had given Claire was the key. A hidden staircase opened beneath the floor. Below lay the true inheritance: gold bars, research journals, formulas capable of transforming the global healthy food industry. Claire read her father's final handwritten letter and finally understood. Her suffering had been preparation. Surrounded by love and truth, Claire made a vow to use this legacy not for revenge or vanity, but to fulfill her father's dream, to benefit humanity. That day, beneath the floor of a modest bakery, a woman once discarded and humiliated arose as the rightful heir of a great legacy, ready to write a new chapter of her life in gold ink. The legal process moved swiftly and transparently. Thanks to the tight supervision of Bhaskara's legal team hired by Daniel, Aaron had no chance to bribe officials or escape justice. One by one, the assets Aaron had once flaunted were seized by the state. The European-style luxury mansion that had once witnessed Claire's silent tears night after night was now wrapped in yellow police tape. The sports cars Aaron used to parade across social media were hauled away by tow trucks under the mocking stares of neighbors. Aaron was systematically stripped of everything. His bank accounts were frozen, his credit cards cut in half, and his company shares collapsed until they were completely worthless. The man who once believed money could buy dignity now couldn't even afford a second-rate lawyer. Inside the cold, suffocating prison cell, Aaron experienced a kind of suffering he had never imagined. He was placed among ordinary street criminals without any special privileges. A thin, musty mattress and bland prison meals became his daily companions. But the cruelest punishment wasn't physical, it was mental. Aaron was haunted by his own past. He remembered throwing Claire's cooking onto the floor just because it lacked salt. Now he survived on hardened rice just to stay alive. He remembered mocking Claire when she wanted independence. Now she was a respected woman protected by one of the wealthiest men in the country. Regret crashed over him like relentless waves, but it was far too late. Tia's fate was no less tragic. The woman who had lived as a parasite in Aaron's life and fueled the destruction of Claire's marriage finally revealed her true colors. During police questioning, Tia immediately turned against Aaron to seek leniency. She exposed all of Aaron's remaining dark secrets, including illegal offshore funds. Tia claimed she was merely a victim, forced by Aaron, a betrayal that made Aaron scream in fury during interrogation. Their illicit relationship, built on lust and greed, ended in deep hatred. Tia was still sentenced to prison after being proven actively involved in forging land documents related to Claire's shop. She lost her beauty, her freedom, and every single one of her socialite friends abandoned her. Meanwhile, across the city, the atmosphere at Sweet Lantern Bakery was the complete opposite of that darkness. The shop shone brighter than ever, radiating positive energy that seemed to attract prosperity from every direction. Though Claire, now publicly known as the sole heir to her father's vast fortune, she refused to drastically change her lifestyle. She continued living on the second floor of the bakery, waking before dawn to knead dough, serving customers with the same warm smile. The difference now was security, no more fear. Claire used part of the inheritance, money discovered hidden beneath the old house, to rebuild the surrounding neighborhood. She paved broken roads, renovated an old mosque at the end of the street, and provided interest-free business capital worth thousands of US dollars to elderly widows. Her humility, despite immense wealth, made Daniel admire her even more. He often visited the bakery not as a powerful CEO, but as a friend. They would sit together in the small garden behind the shop in the afternoons, discussing how to manage her father's legacy for the greater good. To Daniel, Claire was a true gem. Daniel's mother grew increasingly close to Claire. She spent hours at the bakery teaching family recipes, as if preparing Claire to officially become part of the family. The climax of Aaron's downfall came on the day of the verdict. Claire appeared in court as a victim witness, wearing a simple yet elegant pastel dress, her shawl draped softly around her shoulders. She walked in with her head held high, accompanied by Daniel and her legal team. Aaron, sitting at the defendant's table, looked gaunt, sunken cheeks, messy hair, lifeless eyes. When he saw Claire, his eyes filled with tears. Perhaps only at the lowest point of his life did he finally realize the beauty of the heart he had destroyed. After the judge sentenced him to 20 years in prison and total asset confiscation, Aaron was allowed to speak. Instead of defending himself, he turned toward Claire, dropped to his knees, and bowed deeply before her. "Claire, forgive me. I was cruel. I was foolish. Please forgive me," he sobbed uncontrollably. The courtroom fell silent. Claire looked at him calmly. No hatred, no love, just peace. "I forgave you a long time ago," she said gently but firmly. "I forgive you not because you deserve it, but because I deserve a life free of resentment. But forgiveness does not erase justice. You must face the consequences. Repent, and may God still grant you a chance to change." Aaron broke down completely as officers escorted him away. That night, Claire held a modest Thanksgiving gathering at Sweet Lantern with neighbors and orphans. No luxury, just prayer, warmth, and simple food. Thousands of boxes of pastries were donated to orphanages across the city. Watching Claire laugh freely with the children, Daniel realized one thing. He didn't want to spend another day without her by his side. A year later, Sweet Lantern was no longer just a small-town bakery. It had become a symbol of hope. Next door stood House of Light, a 2-story training and empowerment center for abused women and struggling widows. Every morning, women learned baking, sewing, and financial literacy. Claire often taught personally, not just skills, but self-worth. Daniel remained her devoted partner, despite his demanding role as head of Wiryawan Group. Their relationship was mature, respectful, and free of drama. One evening at sunset, Daniel nervously opened a small wooden box carved with delicate patterns. Inside wasn't a flashy diamond ring, but a simple white gold ring with a single pearl and a house key. "Claire," he said softly, "you taught me that wealth is not about what we own, but what we give. I can't promise a life without hardship, but I promise to face every hardship with you. Will you be my wife, my partner, my path to heaven?" With tears in her eyes, Claire smiled. "Yes, I will." Their wedding took place at the renovated neighborhood mosque, simple, sincere, and filled with love. The reception was held at House of Light, open to everyone. Business elites sat beside street vendors. It was the warmest wedding the city had ever seen. Far away, on a busy street, a thin man in a worn orange sanitation uniform swept fallen leaves. It was Aaron. He paused, staring at a giant screen displaying Inspirational Figure of the Month. Claire's smiling face appeared beside Daniel's. Tears rolled down Aaron's dirty cheeks. He lowered his head and returned to sweeping, realizing his life would forever be lived in the shadow of regret. Back at Sweet Lantern, Claire leaned against Daniel on the balcony. Below them, the shop's sign glowed warmly. Sweet Lantern, a symbol that love and hope would never fade. Their story ended sweetly, as sweet as the aroma of freshly baked bread warming every heart it touched.